folks, to the latest installment of Sports with Joe and Ish. I'm the sports editor of the San Marcos Daily Record, Joe Vazzelli, and I'm here with our assistant sports editor now, Ishmael Johnson. And Ish, of course, Texas State was up in Austin to play UT on Saturday night. And I think before the game, if you would have told Danny Casper that you turned Texas over 19 times, you'd hold them to 59 points in their own building, he would have treated that almost as if it was a win. But unfortunately, the offense just wasn't there for them, and really was an ugly performance offensively.
Yeah, it started out interestingly enough. You know, it was very low scoring. I believe they were in single digits. It seemed like for 10 minutes they were in single digits trying to get to that double-digit mark. And the bigs inside for Texas, I thought, was what they would hammer to Texas State. Early on, they didn't really get going. Miles Turner struggled a little bit. Cameron really struggled a little bit. Monty Gay got into foul trouble. But offensively, Texas State just couldn't produce anything. The shooting wasn't there, so Texas was able to clog the paint with their superior size, and it just proved to be... They kept it close, but then all of a sudden, when Texas made a run, Texas State couldn't answer because they couldn't get any good looks. You saw, it seemed like consecutive air balls at times, just trying to force something to get some kind of scoring going because they knew they weren't getting easy looks.
Interestingly enough, Danny Casper said after the game, those shots, in the high post is really what he wanted his team to take. And they found those openings, they just couldn't knock them down. And yeah. I think, Ish, we've been talking about this a couple times. The problem with Texas State offensively is if teams can double team Amani Gann, that's going to force you and just clog the paint. Then that forces you to be able to shoot. You have to have an outside shot. Mm-hmm. And with Ethan Matavalo and Vic Bermudez, they just haven't been able to demonstrate that they have that outside shot. Yeah. And so now when you get into conference play, all teams are going to do is they're just going to crowd the paint, double team Amani, and force you to shoot. Mm-hmm. And basically say, if you can make it, then we might respect it. But yeah. They're not going to respect it until they can show that they can make it on a consistent basis from the three-point.
Exactly, because Amani Gann can't do everything. I mean, you look at the stat boxes that they've won, or the games they've won, and Amani Gann will lead probably almost every category, even assists, steals, things like that. For a big guy to do that much, and for no one really to be that consistent of a threat for other teams to have to game plan around, is going to prove to be crucial. Which is why I think they were picked to finish 7th or 6th in the Sun Belt. I think 5th is the absolute highest they could possibly finish until they get that other option out there. Kevin Tilbury really hasn't progressed, it seems, so far this season. I thought he would be one of the breakout stars after having a pretty successful freshman campaign. So far this season, Montalvo hasn't lived up to the elite shooter hype that he was getting from Casper himself. Casper said he's probably one of the best shooters he's ever seen. Vic Bermudez hasn't gotten his footing in the ground. Although it's better than last season, it's still not what they brought him here to do. And you're right. It's as long as Amani Gann is the only consistent threat, teams can just clog the paint and just double team him. Even guys like Naylor and Weatherspoon who can get the mid-range shot off, and they were the ones getting those good looks, but they just weren't hitting the shots. And when they're not hitting the shots, you're going to get a sub 30-point performance.
Yeah, like you're saying, I think those guys are the two biggest keys because you're going to have to be able to demonstrate that you can hit those shots. They're not behind the three-point arc, but they're sort of those long-range two-pointers. They have to be able to demonstrate that they can do that. And both of those guys, they had it open for a lot of the game. And I thought, Cameron Naylor he hit a couple of those, but just not enough of those. And Jamarcus Witherspoon, it seemed like he was pressing a little bit early in the game, and then once he settled down a little bit, it was too late for it to really matter.
Yeah, Witherspoon has a very interesting knack to get in the paint, and that's from the perimeter, slashing inside. Something that Texas State really hadn't had this year, because you got guys like Brown and Davis who aren't really. They'll come off a screen, then they'll go into the lane. But Witherspoon's the guy that can take a guy one-on-one into the paint, get a shot off. Cameron Naylor, the mid-range shot is probably one of the more inefficient shots, but if Cameron Naylor can hit him, that's his kind of sweet spot there. And if those guys can get clicking, then we haven't seen the best of Texas State. Since we haven't really seen those guys clicking on a consistent basis together. But if those guys get going, then yeah, something can turn around this season. But the Texas game was kind of an indication, even going back to the UTSA game, was if Amani Gann's not there producing, then this offense is in trouble.
Yeah, and give credit to Texas. I mean, look, this is number 8 team in the country. Exactly. They're expected to win by 20 to 30 points. They ended up winning at 59 to 27. But, and like Casper said, he feels like they're very similar to TJ Ford's team back in 2002. And certainly I think defensively they're going to be a team to be a force to be reckoned with when you get into the NCAA tournament. But switching gears a little bit to a team that is doing really well, the San Marcos Lady Rattlers. They're off to a 16-4 start this season. They just are coming off of a 49-7 victory over Memorial High School on Friday night. And Ish, we've been talking about this too a lot. The different attitude for this team. Rhonda Kendall, her first year as head coach, she seems to have brought an attitude to the team that is really playing out well. And quite frankly, from seeing this team last year to this year, is very impressive to me.
Yeah, it's crazy how I was talking to her before the Memorial game the day before, and I was asking, what have you found in these players? Because it's the same roster as last season. Nothing's really changed except Kendall and her system. And she says, the system allows them to express their competitiveness. It's a very aggressive system. They're jumping passing lanes. They're going for all the steals, and it's very in-your-face defensive style that turns into kind of fast break offensive opportunities. And I asked her, I was like, is that kind of an indication of the heart that you want them to play with? Because you can't give 50% in this type of system. You can't, go half-heartedly for a steal. You got to go with your full effort, and you got to push the offense. You got to push the break. And she said, yes, that's exactly what she wanted from them. She knows that this system warrants the best out of any player, and she says they're certainly capable of doing that. And she says that she hasn't adjusted any of her expectations for this team. She said she expected excellence from day one, and they've given it to her because she knew that she can get it out of these players. And it's showing. They're playing phenomenal, and it's really entertaining to watch this turnaround this season.
Yeah, I was just going to say that they're a very entertaining team to watch. I mean, if you love defensive basketball, this is a great team. But it's not just that. I mean, they're able to use that defense to get out on the break and play an exciting brand of basketball. They're not the tallest team in the world, but at the same time, too, they make what they have work extremely well, and you have to admire that.
Yeah, there's no real shot-blocking presence inside. I think Raylan Jackson's probably their tallest player at about 5'11", but they're just so quick, so perimeter-based. Bailey Hill shooting the three looks awesome. Miles running the point sometimes as well as Gonzalez running the point. It's really cool the way that they're playing help defense, because like you said, they're not big inside, but they can rotate and they swarm to the ball, and that's how they use their quickness and their lack of size to their advantage.
Well, that's it for our latest installment of Sports with Joe and Ish. As always, you can check out SanMarcosRecord.com for some of the best coverage of the Bobcats and Rattlers. So for Joe and Ish, we're signing off.